What if I told you that some of Victorian Britain's most brilliant scientists secretly gathered in Edinburgh's shadowy closes to commune with spirits and explore the supernatural? This isn't fiction. This is the remarkable true story of the Edinburgh Occult Circle. Between 1875 and 1895, in the gaslit streets of Scotland's capital, an extraordinary group of intellectuals formed one of history's most intriguing secret societies. These weren't your typical mystics or fortune tellers. They were respected professors, pioneering doctors, and acclaimed scientists who believed that the boundaries between science and the supernatural were far thinner than the world imagined. Edinburgh, in the late 19th century, was a city of contrasts. By day, it buzzed with scientific innovation and medical breakthroughs. The University of Edinburgh was producing some of the world's leading minds in medicine, physics, and natural philosophy. But by night, in the narrow winds and hidden chambers of the old town, these same brilliant minds gathered to explore territories that conventional science dared not enter. The Circle's founding father was Professor Alexander Sinclair, a distinguished physicist whose legitimate research into electromagnetic phenomena had earned him international recognition. Sinclair believed that the same forces governing electricity and magnetism might explain psychic phenomena. He wasn't alone in this thinking. The late Victorian era was a time when the boundaries between science and spiritualism were remarkably fluid. Joining Sinclair was Dr. Margaret Whitmore, one of Edinburgh's first female physicians and a pioneer in what we now call psychology. Whitmore had observed strange phenomena in her patients, experiences that traditional medicine couldn't explain. She documented cases of apparent telepathy, precognition, and what she termed consciousness projection in her private journals, which remained hidden for decades. The circle also included Professor James MacLeod, a renowned anatomist who had made groundbreaking discoveries about the human nervous system. MacLeod theorized that certain individuals possessed heightened sensitivity in their neural pathways, allowing them to perceive what he called etheric vibrations that most people couldn't detect. Perhaps most surprising was the involvement of Sir Robert Carmichael, a respected chemist whose work on molecular structures had revolutionized industrial processes. Carmichael brought scientific rigor to the Circle's experiments, insisting on careful documentation and controlled conditions for all their supernatural investigations. The Circle met every fortnight in a hidden chamber beneath St. Giles Cathedral, accessed through a forgotten medieval crypt. They called their gathering place the Laboratory of the Invisible. Here, surrounded by ancient stone walls and flickering candlelight, they conducted experiments that would have scandalized their academic colleagues. Their investigations were remarkably systematic. They studied telepathic communication using carefully designed protocols, measuring distances and recording success rates. They experimented with seances, but approached them like scientific experiments, using instruments to detect temperature changes, electromagnetic fluctuations, and other measurable phenomena. One of their most documented experiments involved what they called psychic photography. Using early camera equipment, they attempted to capture images of spiritual manifestations. While most results were inconclusive, several photographs showed unexplained anomalies that the Circle meticulously analyzed and debated. The Circle's activities weren't limited to parlor room seances. They investigated reportedly haunted locations throughout Scotland, bringing scientific instruments to measure any unusual phenomena. They documented temperature variations, electromagnetic readings, and acoustic anomalies in places like Edinburgh Castle, Glamis Castle, and the underground vaults of the Royal Mile. Dr. Whitmore's private notes reveal the Circle's most ambitious project, attempting to create a consciousness map of Edinburgh. They believed that strong emotions and traumatic events left psychic imprints on locations, creating what they termed memory echoes. They spent months mapping the city, identifying areas of high psychic activity and correlating them with historical events. The Circle's work wasn't entirely secret within certain intellectual circles. They corresponded with similar groups in London, Paris, and Vienna. The late Victorian period saw a remarkable international network of scientists exploring psychic phenomena, though most kept their investigations carefully hidden from public view. Their most dramatic experiment occurred in 1887, when they attempted to communicate with the spirit of David Hume, the famous Scottish philosopher who had died over a century earlier. According to their records, the experiment produced remarkable results, with the alleged spirit providing information about unpublished philosophical works that was later verified in Hume's private papers. As Professor Sinclair wrote in his encrypted journal, "We stand at the threshold of a new understanding of reality itself. What we call supernatural may simply be natural phenomena operating beyond our current comprehension." This quote perfectly captures the Circle's philosophy. They weren't abandoning science, but expanding its boundaries. The Circle's influence extended beyond their immediate members. Several prominent figures in Edinburgh society attended their gatherings as observers, including politicians, artists, and even clergy members who were curious about the intersection of science and spirituality. This broader network helped protect the Circle from potential scandal. However, the Circle faced increasing challenges as the 1890s progressed. The scientific establishment was becoming more skeptical of psychic research, and several high-profile fraudulent mediums had damaged the credibility of supernatural investigations. Additionally, some Circle members were advancing in their academic careers and couldn't risk association with controversial activities. The Circle's decline began in 1893 when Professor MacLeod died suddenly of a heart attack during what witnesses described as an intense séance session. His death shook the remaining members, and some began questioning whether their investigations were dangerous. Dr. Whitmore documented the Circle's final meeting in December 1895. The remaining members decided to cease their activities and destroy most of their records. However, several members continued their research individually, and some of their findings eventually influenced early 20th century developments in psychology and quantum physics. The Edinburgh Occult Circle represents a fascinating chapter in the history of scientific inquiry. These weren't credulous believers in superstition, but serious intellectuals applying scientific methods to phenomena that mainstream science ignored. Their work prefigured modern research into consciousness, quantum mechanics, and the nature of reality itself. Today, scattered references to the Circle appear in university archives and private collections throughout Scotland. Their encrypted journals and experimental records provide a unique window into Victorian-era thinking about the boundaries between science and the supernatural. The Circle's legacy raises profound questions about the nature of scientific inquiry. Were these brilliant minds ahead of their time, exploring territories that science would eventually validate? Or were they victims of the era's fascination with the mysterious and unexplained? Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that they discovered something real, something that conventional science wasn't ready to accept. In our modern age of quantum mechanics and consciousness research, the Edinburgh Occult Circle's investigations seem less outlandish and more prescient. They remind us that the boundaries of human knowledge are always expanding, and that yesterday's impossibility often becomes tomorrow's accepted fact.